Welcome, fungi and fungals. Yeah, we're ready. Now, this class, Denis been teaching for a little while, healing powers of medicinal mushrooms. We're going to start right at the basics, and we have many people joining us that are also part of the Medicinal Mushroom Symposium, which is an online event that, well, it has been for the last 2 years anyways. Denis and I have been doing for a couple of years, and it's one of those things that we have, how many is it this year? 12 guest speakers, and sometimes we just jump right in the content that a lot of the terminology is over people's heads, like, well, wait a minute, what's mycelium and what's this and what's that? So we're going to start right from the basics. So we're going to kind of build right up. So some of it might be review for some of you, but I guarantee you not all of it. You're going to learn so much about the kingdom of fungi, and in particular, some of the greatest medicinal mushrooms and some of the research that is behind them, as well as we've got some samples and some tasty things to share as well.
So Malcolm, I guess we really just got to start with a question like, what is a medicinal mushroom? A lot of people, might be in this class to learn about magical mushrooms, but unfortunately it's not exactly what you're going to be learning about tonight.
I mean, they're medicinal too. Those are medicinal as well, that's right.
So all mushrooms are medicinal, there's no doubt and no joke about that. What we're really going to be focusing on today, though, are these strange mushrooms you see here. I'm sure all of you recognize these from strolls in the forests and have seen this mushroom growing on countless trees. But truth be told, these are called the noble tree polypores. So if you knock on wood, this is probably one of the most powerful medicinal mushrooms that there is out there, you know?
And it's growing abundantly in our forests.
So these are called the noble tree polypores. So they're woody, hard as wood. And if you look closely on the bottom, they do not have gills, but instead they have pores. But I'll pass this around and you can see, if you look closely into the pores because they're really cool to check out and look in.
One bite makes you grow, another no.
That's called the red belt.
And maybe just to back right up, we got to look at the kingdoms of life, of which the fungi kingdom has been an ally for humans throughout time. There's in fact the oldest human specimen, the most intact specimen that humans have ever found, was a man named Otzi the Iceman. And he was found frozen, basically whole, intact. And he had on him no less than 3 species of fungi that he was using as tools and as medicine.
Yeah.
And in fact, Denis got
all 3 of them right here.
That's what Otzi the Iceman was carrying with him. And here we are still using these fungi today.
So it's very fascinating. Like, when did we lose our knowledge of these mushrooms? Because as a people, I'm sure I'm not the only one that first found out about reishi mushroom only 10 years ago. I was like, what on earth is this reishi mushroom, the mushroom of immortality? How come we forgot about it? But our ancestors knew about them. The people in Scandinavia still know about them. The Chinese people still use them. All the Slavic people still love these mushrooms. It's just something happened something happened to our civilization where we forgot about these. The Greeks talked about these mushrooms. This one is called Amadou, the Tinder Conch. You know, these mushrooms take all sorts of forms and shapes. This one's the birch polypore.
We'll primarily be talking about the medicinal uses and benefits and properties, but the uses of them goes far beyond that. So hence that name Tinder Conch. This one was actually used to transport fire.
And the First Nations peoples use these mushrooms a lot too.
Yeah, chaga you can use to start fire. This one you can hollow it out and carry embers with you. This one also can be pounded down made into like a felt. So I've got a bag that's made out of this particular mushroom.
So we have a few missions today together. we're going to do kind of an overview of the species that are, considered very medicinal, the ones that are commercially very popular right now: Reishi, Chaga, lion's mane, and Cordyceps. So we're going to give you like a super brief overview of their benefits, because you can write whole big books about these mushrooms. You know what I mean? Like, basically all these books are in my head here somewhere. They're all in there. But so we're going to give you a brief overview of the medicinal powers of medicinal mushrooms and what makes them different. Like, why is Chaga so different from Reishi? Why is Cordyceps so different than lion's mane? But also what unites them all as medicinal mushrooms. So we're going to give you a brief overview of the species. The second most important thing we want to share with you today is recipes. Like, how the heck to use these at home. Like, there's no way you're going to gnaw on that unless you were a squirrel, a deer, or a beaver, right? A bird. Birds eat them too.
And just on that note, right, what Denise talking about, yes, there's a ton of research about these medicinal mushrooms. My father, direct quote, says, "I do not believe in herbs." What? I don't even know what that means, but okay, I get it. I get the paradigm you're coming from. He doesn't feel that they've been scientifically validated, right, in that sense. Oh, okay, well.
Yeah, that's a big myth.
Let's pull out the references here and go right into that.
Yeah, like there's something called medical herbalism, where this book is basically all the research that's being done on herbs, and it has a huge section on mushrooms. So it's totally a myth that these haven't been studied by science.
And so here's another kind of window into this world. This invitation is, yes, you can store all this information in your head like Denise got, but you don't have to, right? How overwhelming would that be? There's so much. The most important thing, they say in herbalism, compliance is key. The herbs don't work unless you take them, right? And so take your time learning about them, exploring them. You can have as many books as you want for reference, but the main point, as Denis mentioned, is being able to use them, understanding their properties on kind of a basic level, but as you get into it, exploring it. Yeah. So, someone like Robert Rogers, this is book number, 50 or something that he's written? Like, but it's literally, he's been a herbalist for more than 40 years, and he got into mushrooms, quote unquote, because herbs no longer challenged him. Now, we do a lot of plant walks in the summer. We've been done a couple in the winter even, and we'll often have Robert come, and we'll do guest plant walks with him. And it becomes this game of let's try and stump Robert, right? Like, okay, what about that weird little plant right over there? And you'll think, oh yeah, common name, Latin name, benefits, properties, chemical constituents. And then he starts like in his Rolodex of, oh yeah, I once had a client one time presenting these types of symptoms. And then we gave her this and da. Phenomenal, right? And he calls himself an amateur mycologist. I mean, he's written the book on mushrooms and he's an amateur. Okay, I don't know what we are then if he's just an amateur. So he's one of our speakers at the Mushroom Symposium. But what I like to say is, whether you're Robert and you have an encyclopedic memory and you've got, decades worth of experience, or you're someone like Denis, or you're someone like yourself, maybe completely brand new, the mushrooms work the same. Whether you know this much or this much, we're on an equal playing field. So that's the invitation, right? You can nerd out as much about this as you want. And some of you, like Jen, this is her path, right? She's going to school to become a herbalist. She's trying to absorb all that information. But here's another kind of insight and key is that with herbalism, you ever heard that idea of a practitioner? My friend Blaine Andrewsick, he says, Malcolm, it's a practice. What does that mean? I'm practicing, trying this out, trying that out, right? We're just practicing with these mushrooms. We're developing our knowledge and our skills working with them. So
yeah, and the science is absolutely like earth-shattering once you start reading this stuff. Once you start understanding the benefits of these mushrooms, it's like, is there a reason why we aren't all taking this as a humanity? And is it going to be the evolution of our society, our civilization, once we all start taking these mushrooms? Because they are life transformative things, life transformative substances.
The future is fungi.
Yeah.
And at the very least, you'll become a more authentic version of yourself, right? I think if the mushrooms have one benefit, I mean,
yeah, we're gonna get into that.
Just hang out with a bunch of mycophiles and you'll go, wow, this is, I don't know if they just attracts really like intellectual, nerdy people, or if it's chicken or egg, that kind of a thing. But you know, you become more authentically yourself.
Okay, Malcolm, well, perhaps we have to actually feed all these people a little bit of mushrooms.
All right.
So we've got a very nice tea here. It's so easy to make for yourself at home, of reishi. So we're gonna be serving that to our audience here. We do recommend you at home, if you've got some mushrooms, brew some up to drink it. If you have some extract powder, scoop some in your mouth right now. You know, you can follow along here.
Yeah.
Have fun. But we have a really very nice reishi mushroom tea for you to drink. And all of the benefits we're going to talk about are going to make sense when you're experiencing and feeling that.
Yeah. Okay. So you get that ready. And I'm just going to kind of lay the foundation here. Again, some of you may have heard this before, but I really like to kind of start from this context of the 4 food groups. Not the ones you learned in school, because those weren't very helpful, were they? Right? Grade 2 Canada Food Guide. No, not very helpful at all. Well, here's something that is very helpful. And the 4 food groups, in fact, are the 4 kingdoms of life: plants, animals, bacteria, and fungi. So I just invite you and kind of think for a moment, if there's any food that you consume that exists outside of one of these kingdoms. Right? Huge diversity in each of these kingdoms, and each one of these food groups offers something that the other doesn't. So I was a vegetarian, I was a vegan for a long time. I really tried to hang out here. Plant-based, we're omnivores, humans, right? We eat everything. And it was funny, it was, you know, after years of kind of studying yoga and meditation, trying to reach these states of omnipotence and omnipresence. And it was like, oh, omnivore. That's the highest state of eating, isn't it? So every single culture around the world eats food from all 4 kingdoms. The thing I love about this is it doesn't tell you what to eat, how much to eat, or when to eat. That becomes the individual journey. That becomes the intuitive eating, the intelligent eating, the path that is yourself. And what we want to focus on is that, yes, we're consuming foods from all 4 kingdoms, but a diversity within that, right? If you think about how many different types of plant foods, nuts, seeds, grains, flowers, roots, barks, pollen, algae, on and on and on and on. Absolutely diverse. Animal foods, right? This isn't just eat chicken breasts and steaks. There's eggs, there's fish, there's insects, honey I would include in that, right? Huge diversity. Bacteria, that is our fermented foods. And then fungi, which is what we're going to focus on this evening, is not only mushrooms, right? All mushrooms come from fungi, but not all fungi produce mushrooms. Mushrooms are the reproductive organ of certain fungi. So that's really key to understand, that a mushroom, you can give it, it's like the analogy of the apple on the tree, right? The tree is the fungi and the mushroom is the fruit. It's part of the reproductive stage. And Denis had mentioned that these pores underneath, or even if it's gills, out comes the spore, which is like the seed. Again, that reproductive part. So some fungi produce mushrooms, but not all fungi produce mushrooms. One key characteristic. So actually, here's a question. Some of you might know the answer, but let's see, for those of you that don't, we obviously belong to the animal kingdom. Which kingdom is more closely related to fungi? Is it plants? Is it bacteria? Or is it animals? Bacteria? Actually, it's fungi and animals are most closely related. Yeah, a lot of people think plants, but there's some key distinctions. Fungi, they don't produce chlorophyll. They don't produce their own food. They need to get, just like us, food from outside of itself. And so they typically secrete enzymes. They also breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, another similarity. Fungi have, in part of their cellular structure and makeup, is called chitin. And so we had mentioned kind of a knock on wood type of phenomenon there. It's tough, it's woody. Chitin is the same cellular structure as the exoskeletons of insects, even lobsters, crabs, that kind of thing. All right.
Well, cheers, everyone.
All right, cheers.
Very interesting flavor profile going on there.
Yeah. So
That's
this
straight up all by itself.
just a pure, straight up reishi tea. It's more bitter than it is mushroomy, right? A lot of people are like, oh, mushrooms. Not sure if I like the flavor of those, but it's, yeah, there's a bitterness, there's an earthiness to that. Okay, so within the fungi kingdom, you have things like single-celled yeasts. So in fact, Denis' presentation this year at the Medicinal Mushroom Symposium is going to be all about yeasts.
Yeah.
The oldest domesticated life form on Earth, right?
It's always been very fascinating to me that, yeah, every day we don't even realize we're drinking beer, we're eating bread. It's only thanks to the power of a fungi that we're doing that.
Yeah, so Saccharomyces, which means the sugar-eating fungus. Michael Pollan, New York Times food writer, has written a number of books. He says, you know, people say that dog is man's best friend. He says, I disagree. I think it's Saccharomyces cerevisiae. It is that yeast that leavens our bread and ferments our beer. I'd say that is man's best friend. And it's actually one of the oldest organisms that humans have domesticated. Right? We got this idea of like, oh, we've domesticated cows and chickens and pigs and sheep and this and that, but we've also domesticated these species of yeast. Okay, so within the fungi kingdom, we have yeasts. We also have lichens, which nature's never in boxes, right? I said there's 4 kingdoms, but there's certain organisms that cross these different kingdoms. So a lichen is a combination between a fungi and an algae, which technically is its own kingdom, but we're gonna lump it into plants for now. So there's a little saying, like we got this one from Robert Rogers, that Annie algae and Freddie fungi took a liken to each other.
Yeah, and apparently they've discovered there's a third organism involved now, and it's yeasts. So they're a very symbiotic culture.
Menage a trois.
And yeah, I do consider lichen as a medicinal mushroom.
It's true.
Because this is a fungi.
And
it has tremendous benefits similar to the medicinal mushroom. So we're going to.
And that's why Robert included it in his book, right? The mushrooms and lichens of North America. Another type, we have like molds also in there. But what we're going to be talking about are mushrooms. So again,
I guess
blue cheese, penicillin, right?
Yeah.
Huge number of pharmaceuticals are actually sourced from the fungi kingdom. So just in different forms, we've been utilizing these guys as food and medicine. Another one that kind of crosses over is if you've ever made kombucha. So that's what's called a SCOBY. People call it a mother, but the technical term is SCOBY, symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. It's a combination of those two. So narrowing in kind of into the fungi kingdom here, there are 3 different types of mushrooms. And we're going to kind of talk about each of those. And they're defined by how they get their food. So we have the mycorrhizal fungi, And these are fungi that have this relationship with plants where there's an exchange going on, where they're getting sugars from plants and they're giving nutrients back and forth. And, you know, they're like these thread-like organisms. It's mycelium in the soil with these relationships to plants. So chanterelles is an example of a mycorrhizal fungi, or morel mushrooms, another example of a mycorrhizal fungi. Delicious culinary edible mushrooms that many of us know and enjoy. Another category are the parasitic fungi. So chaga is in fact a parasitic fungi, or lobster mushroom. And so it means they get their food source from other living organisms. The lobster mushroom is a really interesting one where it actually parasitizes another mushroom. And it turns it vibrant orange. It looks literally like a cooked lobster in the forest. Cordyceps is another one. We'll talk about that, where that's a fungus that parasitizes, takes over the central nervous system of different insects. And then the third type is what we call the saprophytic fungi, and they feed off of dead and decaying matter. And those are the most common mushrooms that we know of, like our button mushrooms, shiitakes, brown buttons, as well as many of these medicinal mushrooms, you know, like oysters, the different types of reishi. They grow on dead, decaying trees, and that's what they consume.
So something important that we should touch on here, Malcolm, is when you're going out into the forest and you find these mushrooms and you pick them, you're only picking the fruit of the organism, because the actual organism is this network of mycelium that lives underground, connecting all the trees and making this amazing web. So when we're harvesting and eating these parts of the mushroom, we're not actually destroying the organism at all. This is only part of the organism.
Yeah, hence in Europe, where they have this culture, long traditional culture of picking mushrooms, they're there, right? The more you pick them, they're trying to put up more fruiting bodies to seed, to spore. All right, so some of these mushrooms that we're going to be talking about are delicious. They're edible, right? We can enjoy them as a culinary delicacy, and many of them are actually not edible. Not in the sense that they're poisonous, but in the sense that their cellular structure is too tough, made of that chitin. You actually can't break it down and digest it. So there's other ways that we have to extract that goodness, extract that medicine. And the most kind of common, ubiquitous would be creating tea. So that's what we're enjoying right now. And
what did everyone think of that tea?
It's
very good.
Yeah, reishi is actually a very kind of, you know, calming, grounding mushroom. Yeah, it's very smooth. Yeah. So that was Denis' idea. Kind of serve that one up first. Get us in the mode. Get us in the mood.
Yeah. So once we start really looking at it, mushrooms are part of life on Earth, and it's very funny to me that we stopped consuming them as medicine. It didn't happen so long ago. In the medieval times in Europe, in the apothecaries, you could buy any number of mushrooms. They knew what they were good for fevers, for all sorts of things, ulcers and things. They knew about it.
Even first aid.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when did we forget about it? That's a good question. I think it's when we stopped living in the forest and started living in the cities. That's kind of sad. Kind of like the sad thing that happened to us. We started living inside buildings all the time. We forget what's going on out there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the good news about these mushrooms. They literally bring the forest to you. We'll talk about that in a moment here. But shall we begin then, Malcolm, with our cast of species? Are you still working on
No.
kind of a?
Yeah, we got the good foundation to go from here.
Yeah. So, when did I first start learning about mushrooms? I was working at Planet Organic 10 years ago or something.
Well, longer than that.
Yeah. And we started bringing in this supplement, Reishi mushroom. Reishi, the mushroom of immortality. It was $80 for 12 pills of reishi at this time from Japan. And I was intrigued. It's not often you hear like, okay, the mushroom of immortality. Okay, I'm sold. I'm like very curious about this. And then lo and behold, someone tells me to come visit the light cellar. That they have reishi mushroom there. That's honestly the first time I came here was looking for reishi mushroom. And I remember walking in the door, finding a bag of the slices here. I don't know how much this costs now, but back in the day it was $12. It's like $12. I'm sold. And yeah, it is the way to go. To the most cost-effective way is to get the actual slices of mushrooms, but it's actually, you have to do something to it to make tea. For some people that's difficult. It's hard to make, you're busy, you don't have a kitchen, whatever. So we're gonna kind of go into the different ways, like how to prepare these things and the different preparations you can buy that are ready to go. Yeah, the mushroom of immortality. Where does something get that name? Like, is it true? Depends on your definition, right? Depends on your definition of immortality. But I just want to give you guys an idea of what this mushroom does. I'm just going to read over a little point form of the benefits of this mushroom discovered by modern science. You can pass it around here. This is the real mushroom that I grew like that. That was cultivated.
Yeah, that one is cultivated. There are other relatives that we'll talk about as well. Like this was a wild one.
Yeah. So I got Paul. I hope everyone's familiar with Paul Stamets. I've got his little book, Mycorrhizal here. This is an awesome book to pick up if you're scientifically minded, because it's quite complex. But let me just read you the benefits of reishi from, and these are the benefits that have been discovered according to modern science. So, Ganoderma lucidum, antibacterial, anti-candida. Very interesting. It's a fungus, and yet it fights fungus. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and this is actually maybe one of the biggest myths about mushrooms is that, if you're on an anti-candida diet, you have to avoid mushrooms, and that is not true. Certain mushrooms you would want to avoid. I would say maybe some of the mycorrhizal ones, maybe the ones that you find in the grocery store, but absolutely medicinal mushrooms like reishi actually have antifungal properties. I mean, they need to protect themselves from these lower forms of fungus and yeast as well.
Yeah. So anti-inflammatory. This is very important. One of the major benefits of the medicinal mushrooms is this anti-inflammatory response. And from that is where we see all these different benefits coming from, when it can take inflammation right down. Antioxidant, anti-tumor, antiviral. I'm not allowed to say that out loud anymore. Honestly, the last 2 years, it's probably the most important time for people to be taking these mushrooms, and yet it was the most they've been under attack on the internet.
And yet you wonder why we've lost a connection to natural foods and medicines, right? I think that's. So actually, I just want to go a little bit further because, Denis got a nice little chart here that he's reading off, but in this book, there's even more kind of appendixes back here where you can go further and deeper. So for instance, under antiviral activity, it lists off a number of different viruses. So if you're dealing with influenza or you're dealing with HIV even, and hepatitis B, so on and so forth, you can actually kind of go further. Okay, which mushrooms are antiviral specific to different viruses?
Yeah,
same with
it's fascinating.
Antimicrobial. right? So there's Candida albicans, there's E. coli, there's H. pylori, so on and so forth, Streptococcus. And again, you can go down either by microbe or by species and kind of cross-reference that way.
This is powerful stuff, and this is the scientific research that is finding these things.
Okay, and
Antiviral.
you'd already mentioned anti-tumor. So
Oh, yeah.
again, it's similar in terms of going into specific types of cancers as well. So whether it's bladder, breast, cervical, esophagus, so on and so forth, certain mushrooms are more indicated for certain cancers than others as well. And it's not only that, but it's also can be used with conventional cancer treatments for like radiation, for instance.
Got a question here? Oh, we'll get into that.
Okay.
We'll get into that as we prepare our tea, but you perhaps you're already feeling it.
Yeah.
Perhaps you're already feeling it.
But I would say the quick answer is more is better, right? If I were doing this, there's kind of a general kind of daily lifestyle dose, and then there's a therapeutic dose. And I would, if I was doing kind of cancer therapy, I would load it up, you know, extracts and
liters a day.
tea and this and that, and just really go for it.
I've got one anecdote just about the antiviral where so right before the whole pandemic went down, this guy stopped in here and he was like, I want some medicinal mushrooms for immunity, for energy, for focus, for concentration. So I got him the lion's mane and the cordyceps, little jars of powder. He was taking them. Apparently, so he was working up north in the rigs or whatever, and he was living in a little camp or whatever. Every single person got COVID. He was in northern Alberta where like the initial stuff was happening there, except for him. He was touching the same handles as them, breathing the same air as them, driving in the same trucks with them. He did not test positive for COVID and never got sick while he was there. And he was taking his mushrooms every day. And he came back, he said, I swear it's the mushrooms, Denis. The medicinal mushrooms. That's on the antiviral note anyway. But we'll keep going here. Because believe me, it gets better and better. If you don't already want to take this mushroom. So reishi is great for blood pressure. It can help bring down high blood pressure. It's a blood sugar moderator. So it can really help with long-term energy, not getting like the sugar crashes, the rush and the crash, you know. Blood sugar moderator, cardiovascular tonic, cholesterol reducer, immune enhancer. That might explain a lot of the other things. Kidney tonic, liver tonic, lung and respiratory tonic, nerve tonic, stress reducer. There's one more here, sexual potentiator, that is the only one that reishi didn't
Check the box on.
check the box, and I think we need more research there. I think we need to do some more research, because whenever you find stress reducer, you'll find something good going on there.
Yeah.
So that's one of the most important terms that we really want you to go away with today, is this stress reducing effect of the medicinal mushrooms. And one of the most important words that you could look up is adaptogens. Any herb, because mushrooms aren't technically herbs, that is considered adaptogen, the definition of it is that the stressful stimuli can still exist around you, like, oh no, I'm stuck in traffic or something, you know, oh my gosh, I have 20 minutes. I have like 20 minutes to do all these things, you know, the stimuli can still exist. But if you're taking these substances internally, the stress will not affect the organs of your body. That's the definition of adaptogen. The stress can still exist, but it's not going to be damaging to the organs of the body. And we all know how damaging stress is to the body.
or you recover faster, right? You just released a
Yeah.
whole bunch of endorphins and, stress hormones, and, you can come back to that balance sooner.
So reishi is one of the great adaptogens in the world. Literally what generates adaptive strength, like what allows you to adapt to stressful circumstances. So that means a lot of good things. I know we could go on a whole discussion of how does stress affect us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And right now, anxiety is high. And I've honestly been using the reishi as one of my #1 first aid remedies here. Because so many people come to me with like severe anxiety right now. And honestly, reishi is probably my #1.
Yeah.
One of my #1 first aids for those kind of.
And even as a student, right? You had a lot of experience.
Oh yeah, going to university. So memory is one of the first things that gets affected by stress, right? It's because when you're thinking about something that's not right here, I'm like trying to read this. Damn it, I've got all my laundry to do at home. You know what I mean? Not paying attention to the. You're not really paying attention. That's what anxiety is. That's what stress is. If you can believe it, reishi mushroom allows you to be in the moment of now, and everything that you pay attention to, you're going to remember it. So as soon as I started taking reishi, I saw some pretty dramatic increases in my academic life. As soon as I started taking reishi, my memory improved dramatically. There's a reason for that. Once we start talking about reishi, it's like a cascade of benefits, right? It's like, okay, they can be doing this one thing that starts another good thing happening in the body. That starts another good thing happening in the body. That starts another good thing happening in the body. And then I guess you know what it was like to feel immortal is the true definition of the word from the Chinese is just I guess it's living in the moment of now. Like that's immortality for them. Yeah. So that just kind of flat. Oh, we can talk about that. Long story. Okay, so what's actually going on when we drink this mushroom? What's the science behind it? Hey, maybe we can get into that, hey Malcolm.
Okay.
Because each of the medicinal mushrooms is similar to each other. So when we're talking about reishi here, we want you to know, for the most part, this is the truth for all the medicinal mushrooms. So we're just using reishi here as a kind of example. You gotta grab my reishi. We're just gonna use this as a sort of an example.
Yeah.
So there's a very fascinating constituent. One of the most the most important medicinal constituents in the medicinal mushrooms, and this is all of them, right? Reishi, red-belted polypore, turkey tail, chaga, lion's mane. They all have this in common. And that is the richness of this compound known as the beta-glucans. Or, well, yeah, they're called the beta-glucans. And they're actually an incredibly complex form of sugar.
So what they call long chain polysaccharides. We obviously understand like simple sugars, very simple structure to it, and actually taste sweet. Can spike our blood sugar, but the longer those chains, the more complex it gets, like a polysaccharide.
They're very trippy.
It's a sugar, but it actually doesn't taste sweet, and it metabolizes very differently in the body. And this is what feeds the immune system.
So the latest science is determining. So we've found out about essential fatty acids, right? We as humans, we need fats from outside of ourselves to nourish our brains, nourish our hormones, do all these things. We have the essential fatty acids. Then we have the essential amino acids, right? The proteins that are we need from outside of our bodies to function. What science is finding out, they're going to name the sugars in these mushrooms essential sugars, because we actually need the sugars from inside these mushrooms for a very important task in the human body. And that is giving birth to immune cells. Basically, what happens when you drink this tea of these mushrooms, you drink it, your body actually takes it into your bone marrow. Your body takes the beta glucans, brings it into the bone marrow, inside of your bones. And it gives your body everything it needs to build immune cells. So it's like these beta glucans, I like to describe them as the building blocks for immune cells. So your body can build white blood cells with them. Your body can build macrophages, NK killer cells. It literally gives your body the substances it needs for the immune system.
Neat thing about the medicinal mushrooms is that there are immunomodulators. So it's again that term that Denis brought up, adaptogens. Helps your body adapt versus forcing it one way or another. So certain herbs are what we call unidirectional, right? They might increase blood pressure or decrease blood pressure, or it's one direction, where a modulation helps your body find balance. So something like reishi is actually really good for someone that might have an autoimmune, just as it is somebody that has an underactive immune system.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we see reishi has been studied for its benefits for asthma, seasonal allergies, the arthritis that comes from your own immune system attacking you, right?
Rheumatoid.
Yeah. So it can have a very good effect for those disorders of your immune system when your immune system is actually attacking you. And that's what our modern science has no idea. Our modern science has zero idea about how the immune system works. They say a lot of these conditions are incurable. They're going to give you drugs to stop the symptoms without actually getting to the root cause. What we're understanding with these mushrooms is that people with these immune disorders can have substantial relief. Like these work wonders for those people. So it is totally a myth that people have to live with these autoimmune disorders.
So yeah, I would say the only caveat, so I've said all medicinal mushrooms are immunomodulating. The only one that I've heard anecdotally that is more of an immunostimulant is chaga. And that comes from a naturopath who says, you know what, chaga, if any time I've given it to somebody who's has that autoimmune, they've said it in a few cases, it tends to be more stimulating than it is balancing. But without hesitation, they would go to something like reishi for autoimmune.
Yeah. And what else? Well, what good things happen to you when your body is full of white blood cells? Chinese medicine actually recognized that there is an energy that flows through the body inside the bone marrow. They call it nei kung, and the martial artists love the energy that is inside your bone marrow. Yeah, literally, one of the ways they classified reishi is as a chi tonic. So a tonic to your energy, your chi, so that when you drink this stuff, you're actually going to find yourself having all of this energy all of a sudden. And we do see reishi being used clinically for adrenal fatigue, for kind of this chronic fatigue syndrome, Epstein-Barr, whatever, chronic fatigue syndrome. Reishi is probably one of the number one things that can be used for chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue.
So let's just go into a little bit of that terminology some more. So in the Chinese system, we've all heard that term qi, right? Relates to energy. There's a great analogy of the candle, because in fact, many would actually see reishi as a 3 treasure tonic. So Jing, Qi, and Shen. And so the idea of the candle analogy is very good in the sense that Qi would be described as like the heat, the fire. And the personification would be a rock star, right? Ton of Qi, lots of fire, big fireworks, but oftentimes not sustainable, right? It's big flames and then kind of a crash afterwards. Really that long sustenance would be what's called your Jing. So in that analogy, that would be the candle, right? How big is the candle? How thick is it? That also determines the wick, how big that flame is going to be, and it will give you that kind of sustenance, that staying power. So the personification of Jing would be, a fighter in the 10th round, right? Who's got that endurance to keep going, keep going, keep going. And then the Shen, which is the third, is described as the light, the glow, the kind of the radiance. So personification of the Shen would be like the Dalai Lama, right? There's something, kind of radiant and spiritual about this person. Shen can almost be described as like the subtleties of the mind, right? If someone's very kind of calm and balanced and has a spiritual type glow to them. And I would say if, arguably it's definitely a 3 treasure tonic. So it feeds all and nourishes all those 3 qualities. But maybe it might be argued that it shines most as a Shen tonic.
Yes. So Shen can also be translated as your mental and emotional state as well.
So hence why Denis been referring, anxiety, those types of things, for just kind of calming, quieting the mind.
Yeah.
When our friend Dr. Terry Willard wrote this book, I think this was in the 80s, Reishi mushroom, herb of spiritual potency and medical wonder. You've got another book that refers to Reishi as
spiritual vegetable. Spiritual vegetable meat. Well, I'm going to tell that story in a second.
Okay, all right. I'm getting ahead of myself.
I'll tell that story in 1 sec here.
All right.
But yeah, this is very fascinating. Is everyone like, whoa, what the heck? Is this just one herb we're talking about? We haven't moved. Yeah, we sure could. We sure could. Maybe we'll in a sec.
Okay, I'll serve up some more tea.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about how to prepare it and all that.
Okay, so we're getting places here as far as it goes, like what happens to the body when you drink the reishi, right? Is that our body now has the building material to build white blood cells, to build immune cells. And this has a huge effect on inflammatory conditions. Inflammation, this can be in your joints, your knees, your back. It can be inflammation in your gut. Like reishi is actually, and all the mushrooms are famous for ulcers and helping digestion. The inflammation can be in your brain, Inflammation is definitely causing a lot of trouble to a lot of people. That inflammatory response is entirely up to our immune system. So if our immune system has all the resources it needs, it's going to do fine. It's going to take care of those things. It's going to bring the pain down. Reishi is known as an anti-inflammatory pain relieving substance. And when that starts to happen, all sorts of other good things start to happen too. You start to feel good. You start to feel like you've got some pep in your step again.
Is this reishi mushroom?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Just pure reishi. So the other benefit of reishi, and this is what makes reishi special and different than the other medicinal mushrooms. So all of these benefits we're talking about, they're for all the mushrooms. So it can be cordyceps, turkey tail, lion's mane. All of the medicinal mushrooms have those beta-glucan polysaccharides. So all of the medicinal mushrooms have these effects. What makes reishi special, and you can kind of see it from what it looks like here. Well, it totally looks like a kidney for the adrenal fatigue, right?
Giant
It totally looks like a heart. We're talking about the heart. We're talking about the emotional aspects of reishi, the mental aspects. That energy called Shin is said to reside in your heart. So this is one of the great heart medicines, not only physically, but also emotionally as well. What else does it look like? Well, totally looks like a liver, right? So that's one of the major benefits of reishi compared to some of the other mushrooms, because reishi is more bitter than the other mushrooms. Reishi is quite bitter in comparison to cordyceps or lion's mane or chaga. So reishi is actually one of the best liver herbs there is. One of the best liver herbs. Actually, we have this book here, Herbal Medicine. It's quite an unfortunate name for a title of a book. I would just call it Herbs for the Liver, but
It's called Herbs for Hepatitis C and the Liver, and it's by Stephen Herod Buhner.
But reishi is one of the great liver herbs. So this is where reishi really gets, compared to the other mushrooms, reishi really has this calming and quieting effect. And that has to do with the liver. If your liver is out of balance, what lives in your liver? Frustration, anger. You don't see me getting, I got pretty angry a little these last couple of years though. Maybe I need some more reishi. But what is the good thing? What is the good emotion that lives in your liver when it's happy and healthy? It's willpower. And they say it manifests as jumping out of bed, excited for your day. But what happens with when you drink the reishi? It totally will start to detoxify the liver, regenerate the liver, and what happens is your blood becomes clearer, cleaner, and it can transport more oxygen to the brain. So when your blood comes through your liver, it gets filtered, and the cleaner it is, the more oxygen it can actually transport. And so it's a brain oxygenator. So this is where you see this effect of reishi to help with insomnia. Reishi is the #1 herb prescribed for insomnia in Japan. So it's because of this effect to oxygenate the brain. Helps with insomnia, helps with anxiety, and that's where we see these real benefits for memory, because your blood is actually taking oxygen to the brain. Oh, wow. Wow. Is that all one herb, Malcolm? Is that all one herb?
Yeah.
Well, there's more. There's more, if you can believe it.
I mean, there's volumes and volumes
Yeah.
of stuff written about this herb. So how do we take it? This is a whole form. You can find it in smaller, larger. We actually have one of the largest reishi mushrooms literally in the world on the other side of that wall. As we mentioned, it's very tough. It's very woody. So you're typically going to find it in slices where it's been cut. And this particular reishi, I just want to make a mention of it because I think this is the frontier of fungi is the growing of mushrooms, right? Wild mushrooms, of which there are many, and we'll introduce you to similar species to reishi. Reishi's kind of been famed throughout the Orient for a long time, but reishi actually grows on every continent in the world.
Absolutely.
Except Antarctica.
And some of these mushrooms we've been passing around are from our wild forests. They're identical. They have the same properties. We just haven't researched them as much.
Yeah, so there's different types and species of reishi. When you find one in the forest, sure, they make nice kind of, mantelpiece conversation pieces, but ultimately you're going to want to use it for medicine. Once it dries, it's too tough. It's hard to break up. You really need a bandsaw to be able to cut it. So, when you're going to purchase from the store, you get it
Yeah.
in this form where there's more surface area and you can portion it a little bit better and easier. So a bag like this, I can't remember what it costs either, but what was $12 would create you gallons of tea in this form. And you want to do a very special herbal preparation called a decoction, which basically translates to boil the shit out of it. Because no amount of chewing, you're really going to not get the goodness out of it. And if you manage to kind of choke it down and swallow it, you're not going to be able to digest it. But the hot water, boiling it more than just a steep, right? This is not like a tea bag and we're just kind of like steep it. We need that kind of nice simmer, that rolling boil to really pull and extract the properties. And, you can tell it's got a nice color to it. There's a bit of a little kind of a nice aroma, some good flavor. And those same few slices, so maybe in a liter of tea, I might do 5 or 6 or 7, depending on how strong you want it. You bring your water to a boil, you throw your slices in, you turn it down to a simmer. And then the longer it goes, the stronger it gets. So you can go for 15 minutes. You can go for a half an hour, and pour that off. And then you keep those slices and you can rebrew that a second time, even a third time. And each time I'll add slightly less water, but you'll continue to pull and extract more and more out of it until, again, you see that, oh, well, the color's less, the flavor's less. Then that's when you're kind of done, and you'll toss them and you'll start again.
Yeah, and you can use this decoction, like let's say you make a whole bunch. You can use it to cook your rice in it. You can use it to make soup broth. That's actually one of the famous ways to use the reishi. You just want to fish these out of there like it's bay leaves, right? You can't eat these ones. Yeah, so, well, I thought I would so let's wrap reishi up. We've been talking 1 hour about reishi now. And we got to move on to some of the other mushrooms because we got 3 more characters we really want to introduce you to here. But I can't help but read to you from the ancient Chinese herbal, the Divine Farmer's Materia Medica. If you don't know, this is the oldest written herbal text on the planet Earth. And this guy's name was Shen Nong. He classified all of his herbs as superior and inferior. Superior ones were the ones that you could take every day, where inferior herbs were the ones that you would take specifically for a condition. And if you took too much of an inferior herb, you would go out of balance energetically.
And so that comes back to that unidirectional or dual directional, right? Modulation helps bring you into balance regardless of where you're at. Whereas if it's unidirectional, okay, we want to lower blood pressure, keeps taking your body that direction.
Yeah, so here's and literally his number 1 herb is reishi. So Ling Qi is bitter and yet balanced. It mainly treats binding in the chest. So there we saw one of the major scientifically validated uses of reishi is for the blood pressure. Treats binding in the chest, boosts the qi of the heart, supplements the center. So when they're talking about the center, they're talking about the adrenal energy. It nourishes the core, the adrenal energy, sharpens the wits, makes it, and causes people not to forget, improves the memory. Prolonged taking may make the body light. I think that has to do with not having the weight of the world on your shoulders. It'll make you feel like you're floating around, is what he's trying to say. Prevent senility and prolong life so as to make one an immortal. There's something going on here. There's something going on here. Very fascinating. Yeah, this is one of the funnest things as a herbalist, is going back in time to the origins and learn about the herbs there. And what we realize is they knew more than we did. They sure did. Everything I just described there has been sort of discovered now by science. So it's very fascinating. Very fascinating world. Okay, so
Okay, which one do you want to do next?
okay, we're moving on. Maybe we should take any questions now if you have any.
Okay, Grace asks, will we be as awesome as Denis if we take it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's happening here.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Again, you become more authentically yourself.
It's the mushroom.
Oh, go ahead.
Is the Reiki mushroom, is it the same potency whether it's the slices or in the hard form?
Okay, so the question was, is reishi just as potent if you're using the slices or if you've got
Yeah.
like an actual reishi?
You have to slice that with a
Yeah.
saw or whatever, but
So the greater this,
even though they're dried out.
greater the surface area, the stronger your extraction will be faster. So the more you have it exposed to the boiling water, the faster you're going to get a really strong tea.
Okay, but whether it's really hard one here that's dried.
Oh, this is really hard too.
Oh.
Yeah, so
This is hard as
literally-
wood.
The same potency.
It's exactly the same. It's just
Yeah.
been sliced up.
Drying doesn't make it weaker.
No.
That's what I'm asking.
Oh,
No, yeah, great question. Yeah, so same form, just been sliced up. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. So frontier of mushroom growing. Because reishi used to be and still is kind of, a very kind of revered thing when it is found wild. And they say that the wild reishi has more of these kind of Shin qualities. And in fact, it was kind of like back in Robin Hood days where you couldn't hunt the deer, right? Those are the king's deer. This was the emperor's mushroom and no one else could harvest it. Now we've all got access to it, right? The wild, but as well as the
True.
cultivated. But there's a whole gradient of cultivated mushrooms, and the Chinese are the absolute best at cultivating mushrooms, not only cultivation, but also in their extraction methods. Although it's vastly improving and spreading all around the world, mushroom cultivation. And what we've realized is that, you are what you eat eats. What do we feed the mushroom influences the potency of the mushroom, right? Well, a wild mushroom, right? The terroir, the environment it's in, the old growth that it's growing on gives it a certain characteristic versus growing on rice. And I don't want to put down rice, but that's a different substrate than hardwood. In the kind of the growing terminology, there's something called dawnwood, which means original wood. What reishi has always grown on has a different quality, even if it's cultivated. So we found this supplier that actually is growing, we call it Reishi 42, because they're growing on a substrate of 42 different medicinal herbs. And they found that there's compounds in this reishi that's not in any other reishi that they found, unique, novel compounds. So I think that's kind of the frontier of like, well, what else could we grow mushrooms on, right? And what will be the result? Yeah.
yeah. This one is.
Yeah. So
This is Ganoderm. This is a cousin of the red reishi.
So
this
this-
one's called the artist's conch.
yeah. So this is kind of like our local reishi. So the famed reishi of the Orient is Ganoderma lucidum. We have a West Coast version, Ganoderma organensis, which looks very similar,
And I'd say this one, red belted conch, is just as good.
which is a totally different species.
Yeah, this one has a profound mind quieting effect though when you drink it. Zen.
Yes.
Dried properly.
Great question. And I'm just going to repeat all the questions for those online. So do mushrooms have a long shelf life? If they're dried properly, then forever. Yeah. Yeah. So dried properly, you would know if it's not developing like a mold or something. So for instance, we had a guy, we've got a couple of chaga suppliers. Chaga primarily grows on birch trees. It's a northern hemisphere fungus. incredible. There's lots of sources out in primarily Ontario, but also the East Coast. And we work with a couple, and I had somebody sent me this giant box of chaga. And first time, you know, it was kind of unsolicited. He's like, sends me all this chaga. And by the time, you know, came in the mail, we received it, it was waiting to be packed. It was actually starting to mold because he didn't dry it properly. It was still fresh and it was so dense that it wasn't drying properly. So that was one indication when it was quite obvious to see how it was molding. Yeah, even a little bit of heat as well. And neat thing about the mushrooms, actually, it's been found that if you dry them with pores up or gills up to the sun, it actually synthesizes vitamin D. So here's another frontier, right? Who's doing that in the commercial field? Who's growing the mushrooms on unique substrates and then drying them to the sun to increase the vitamin D? I think there's so much potential there.
Can you tell me about the extract that you have? Because I have it. So can I just then put that in a smoothie and put it in my coffee so it's not sweet?
The powder.
Still get that better.
Okay, really great question. And this relates to,
We've got a few good questions coming on the internet too, related to that question.
all right. So this is kind of like the raw form of the mushroom that, again, you have to do something to. The most easy accessible is making tea. We'll talk about how to make tinctures and syrups and things like that. Other form that you can find it in is typically it's already been extracted. So it might come in a pill form, right? You know, 12 pills for $80 like Denis was buying way back in the day.
That's your question there, Tanner. You're asking,
Yeah.
what are my opinions on the pill form? And then Grace is asking, what are my opinions on the tincture form?
So pills
And-
can be convenient, right? And you would want to find something that's, again, an extract of. There's no point just grinding this down into a powder and putting it into a pill. So, and there's very, 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 very few companies that would even do that. So it is an extract form. So they've either done hot water or they've done alcohol to be able to pull and extract those properties. And then it's basically dried back down to a powder. I prefer like bulk powders, right? I mean, look at that. I mean, that's a huge amount. I mean, that's a commercial type volume or a therapeutic type volume if you're really trying to hit it. But even this might be like a month's supply. This might be kind of 3 months just on a kind of regular use. But one of the key things Denis mentioned about the taste, the flavor, the bitter, you know, and you don't get that in a pill. And I get it. There's always a time and a place where you're like, okay, I just don't want to taste it. I need to get it down. But if you can taste it, you're going to get more of the medicine. And so these powders are very easy and convenient in that they've been hot water extracted. So it's like juiced and dried in that sense. There's none of the fiber that's indigestible. It's just all bioavailable compounds. And I'll show you how quick and easy it is to make instant tea with them.
Oh yeah. So my answer to the question would be whatever form that is the most convenient to you to take is the best form. So if you're going to be more likely to take a bunch of capsules, why not just I recommend taking them any way you can get this mushroom medicine inside of you. Malcolm is going to make a little instant tea here with the extract powder.
So we're doing
super easy.
8 cups or 2
Yeah.
liters.
Ooh.
So I maybe put in, 2 teaspoons.
Oh man.
But you can go as little as 1/8 of a teaspoon or 1/4 of a teaspoon. They're quite concentrated.
These extract powders dissolve in hot water.
Yeah.
Then the Grace had an interesting question though about the tincture form. So we're going to talk a little bit about tinctures, and that is an alcohol extract of the mushrooms. And actually all the mushroom powders we have here at Lightsolar are called dual extract. They contain both the water soluble and alcohol soluble elements. There is a benefit to taking tincture form versus the other forms. And it has a lot to do with the liver healing benefits of these mushrooms. Because when you're taking a tincture of a mushroom.
So you can see how easy that was, right? That's 2 teaspoons. I didn't do the math. I just kind of shook it in, but you can instant tea, right? Just hot water. The great thing about these extracts, it doesn't even need to be in water. You can add it to chocolate. You can add it to, any type of context, and you'll get that instant tea. You can see a real potency. There's no sediment, there's no fiber. It's just a nice, beautiful tea. So we'll
Very convenient.
pass this one around.
Very convenient, instant. So that's actually a different mushroom you're going to taste, but it's going to prepare you for the next segment here. It's going to get, yeah. Okay, so here's a tincture of the mushrooms, right? What happens when you have a tincture is that, so we were talking about how the reishi is so good for the liver, right? And there's actually a benefit when you take a herb in an alcohol form, that it actually is brought directly to your liver by the alcohol. So having the medicinal mushrooms in an alcohol can target your liver. I know it's funny, they say I know they say to take it easy on your liver, not to drink alcohol, but in this case, it's such small amounts of really, that one's jammed. Oh, it's like I'll have, you get the idea. You're actually like targeting your liver with those herbs. When you're drinking the tea, it'll have that effect too, but it is more pronounced with the alcohol form of that. You're actually targeting the liver. You're gonna have some cool effects from that. Not only that, but for some people, it definitely guarantees they're gonna take their mushrooms. Like my parents, if I give them this little extract powder, they're not gonna take it. If I present them with something like this, which is a chaga mushroom syrup, which is an alcohol-based form, this bottle is gonna be gone in a couple of days, a couple of weeks. It guarantees compliance for some people. Get it into them as any way you can, folks.
So really, we're talking about solvents, right? Water is a solvent, the pollen extract, alcohol is an incredible solvent as well. So it pulls everything kind of water soluble, but also non-water soluble.
Okay, so that's the question, guys.
So now you're tasting Cordyceps mushroom. So this is one of those parasitic fungi. And we'll go more into depth about Cordyceps.
So whatever form that you can take it is the best.
Okay, Ian and Marianne, they've got a question here about the reishi slices. Can we reuse them in an alcohol extraction after the water extraction? So really, really great question. So yeah, you can brew up your chaga, your reishi, any of these kind of raw mushroom pieces into a water extract, and then you can actually take that and then put it into an alcohol to further extract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are substances in the medicinal mushrooms that are not water soluble. They're only alcohol soluble. These are the resinous compounds. So these mushrooms are growing on trees like pine, spruce. They actually do concentrate those resinous compounds. And those resinous compounds are like sap, for example, frankincense is a great example in herbalism of the effects of these resinous substances. But those substances are known and have been studied extensively for their antiviral effects. The resinous substances are very antiviral, and in medical herbalism, they're known as, what are they called again? Cell wall. They do something to the cell wall of viruses. What's it called again, Malcolm? Yeah, they dissolve the cell walls of the viruses. So are we allowed to talk about this? We all should be talking about this, right? Yeah, that's silly. But okay, well, yeah.
Okay, a couple more comments, questions. So Donna says she sprinkles the mushroom extracts over yogurt and fruit, along with the sprinkle of sea buckthorn, schizandra, little bee pollen. Yeah, totally. Okay, Grace. Oh,
Oh.
Donna wants to come over for breakfast.
So any way that you can take these mushrooms, if that's easy for you, put it in your food, go for it. Go for it. It's actually one of my favorite ways to consume the one you're tasting right now. Okay, I guess we should move. I guess we're ready. We got to move on to our next species here, because we've only done one of the 4 species we wanted to talk about tonight. Oh yeah. Okay, so next up, everyone in the room here has been tasting one of my very favorite mushrooms for a few reasons. It's the Cordyceps mushroom. Oh, I better get some too. So
yeah, this is the one that we talked about. So reishi and the like, saprophytic fungi. Cordyceps is one of those parasitic fungi, or the caterpillar fungus, it's also known as. This is the one that maybe you've seen the BBC, documentary series about the fungus that will basically take over the central nervous system of an insect, and it myceliates its entire body. So it turns it into fungi, and it puts a little mushroom up out of its head.
Yeah.
So they can parasitize different caterpillars, ants. There's cordyceps found all around the world, actually.
and a lot of people talk about a nightmare scenario when Cordyceps fungi escapes and starts taking over humans. But let me tell you, this already exists. Because what is Candida yeast? So what we understand, a lot of these mushrooms are very anti-Candida. But yeah, apparently Candida yeast lives in your gut, eats the food that you aren't digesting, and it can actually take over your brain and make you do things that you wouldn't know that you're doing. You're in line. Gonna grab this. It makes you like grab things to eat that you wouldn't necessarily want. The Candida wants to eat sugar, basically. So
Yeah,
we'll grab sugar, do weird things. I don't know. Candida definitely affects the brain and the mind. So that's a side note. It's very interesting how these mushrooms are so good and anti-Candida remedies.
okay, I've seen another good question come up here, and we might as well go into that. So Roger's asking, can you elaborate on any seasonality aspect regarding consumption or time of the day? Yeah, great question. So interesting thing about many of these mushrooms, these polypores, these tree fungus, reishi is actually one that is an annual. So meaning it will grow this much in a year. And it's totally antifungal, antiviral, has all those properties, will maintain its integrity until it spores. So releases its seed, and then it kind of just disintegrates back down. So this one is actually very seasonal in terms of finding it. Whereas the other relatives, so like the Ganoderma appanatum, the artist conch, this one's a perennial, and you'll find it in the forest any time of year, any season, and it can be harvested and used as medicine that way. Same with the red-belted polypore. There are better times of year to pick chaga than others, but otherwise it's always out on the tree and available. So
it's a very good question as far as timing of the day as well. You want to take these mushrooms. The reishi is known to be really good for insomnia. So it is one of the ones that's good before bedtime.
yeah, and you can have it in the morning. It's not like it will cause you to be drowsy, right?
But
it doesn't have that kind of effect, but it's nice and calming. It's relaxing. You can have it any time of the day. In fact, maybe one of the most common ways it's consumed is with coffee. There's a multi-level marketing company out there. Just sign up under me. No, just joking. They claim to have the healthiest coffee in the world, right? And they get all these like studies and this and that and these kind of testimonials about their coffee. Well, there's nothing about their coffee. It's the fact that they just add reishi mushroom to it. So you can do the same by either brewing up reishi tea and making your coffee with that, or using the extracts. Open up the capsules or have your kind of your bulk powder, a little quarter teaspoon into your coffee. Boom, you've got reishi mushroom coffee.
So I've had a few experiences
taking tremendous doses of these mushrooms. We're talking like,
So you've
we're
heard of
talking one of
microdose.
these jars in a night. I mean, it's 18 bucks, right?
Why not?
What is that? 2 beers at the bar? Not these days. Why not just eat a whole bunch of medicinal mushrooms? It's fun. It's actually so worth it. So worth it. Recommend you try that. But let me tell you, I've had a few experiences where there's one mushroom especially that has kept me up all night, and it's the Cordyceps.
The one you're drinking right now.
It's the Cordyceps mushroom. So
So remember how we talked about reishi being a 3 treasure tonic, but primarily maybe a Shin tonic, heart tonic. Cordyceps is known primarily to be a chi tonic.
Yep.
So it really is like the one that, you know,
it really is famous. Cordyceps mushroom is famous for athletes. One of the things that Cordyceps does that's very different from reishi, different from the other mushrooms, Cordyceps actually opens the lungs. Cordyceps is actually increases aerobic capacity, so you can breathe deeper. You can, and by being able to breathe deeper, you can run faster, further, longer. You know, it's one of the best things about Cordyceps, opens your lungs. And I've had experiences with people come to me like, oh, Denis, I've had this lung thing for years and it never went away. 2 weeks on the Cordyceps, they came back like, wow, I can breathe again. I can breathe deeply again. So it opens your lungs. The other things Cordyceps does is it actually increases circulation to the extremities. So we're talking, if you have cold feet, cold fingertips, very useful. Cordyceps actually comes from very high in the mountains in the Himalayas, right? Cordyceps originates in Tibet. Although it's all over the world, it's one of the places it thrives. We actually have Cordyceps in Alberta. It loves the high altitude, cold environments. But
it's one of the most expensive herbs on the planet.
yeah. So
If it's a wild cordyceps, because literally it's way above the tree line. It's even, in fact, you know, almost above the plant line in that sense, where, I mean, again, it's parasitizing insects, sometimes as small as ants. So people literally have to go on the ground kind of combing for it, looking for this little mushroom sticking up out of an insect. So
caterpillar. And yeah, as Malcolm says, it was the most expensive herb on the planet Earth. Like even 20 years ago, it apparently was $10,000 a pound dry weight for Cordyceps.
and so of course you get all kinds of trickery going on where people insert, like, you know, lead into the, you know, the cordyceps, make them weigh more, that kind of thing. So you really got to be careful when it comes to sourcing wild cordyceps.
But there's a reason why it was
but we-
$10,000 a pound.
But we have, you know,
A jar like this is 18, so
cultivated, right? And they've shown that, you know,
8
there
to
might
1.
be a subtle difference, but the techno-grown cordyceps can be just as good. And some of them that are cultivated are literally still grown on insects, but they've also figured out how to grow it on things like rice and other substrates.
So 2 of these jars is equivalent to a pound of dried weight Cordyceps. So 2 of these jars would have been, that's $5,000 worth of a substance here. But why did people pay that much money?
So Denis giving you a hint here.
It's obviously worth it.
There's a increase in aerobic activity and circulation to the extremities.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely Cordyceps is known as a very powerful and effective sexual tonic.
Well, in fact, there's a name, the Cordyceps, I think is
Yeah, Cordyceps.
Cordyceps.
Cordyceps. Maybe I should change. Maybe I should change my name on the internet to that. Hey, Malcolm.
Yeah. I don't know. Is that a swipe right or a swipe left? I don't know.
Swipe. Yeah, I've never done that. I don't know. But yeah, that's one of the tremendous So those are the tremendous benefits of cordyceps. Opens the lungs, increases circulation to the extremities. And it seems like, yeah, it's very famous for, similarly to reishi, bringing down inflammation in the body. And cordyceps especially famous for knees, knee pain, and lower back pain. And those are associated with, like, no, you guys, we fed them too much cordyceps here. We fed them too much cordyceps. Oh, you guys. Well, yeah, definitely
Leave
good
it
for
up.
some mobility there, but where was I here? Oh yeah, very good for pain, inflammation, and it would appear cordyceps is one of the mushrooms famous for restoring adrenals and restoring hormonal proper levels of hormones in the body, and especially it's known in men to help bring back a lot of testosterone. I think that it does not actually contain testosterone. It's because it helps so much with the stress. So the less stress men have, the more testosterone they get.
All right. So if we come back to this chart, so antioxidant, blood pressure support, blood,
Talking about cordyceps here.
yeah, blood sugar support, cardiovascular support, cholesterol, immune, kidney, liver, respiratory, nerve, sexual, and stress, all across the board. All right.
And I recommend trying big doses. Try it out. You're it
Equivalent
does,
of 2 beers at the bar.
yeah. It's funny. So
Okay.
that's cordyceps in a nutshell. And you obviously all tasted it, right? It tastes a lot different than the reishi.
It's a little bit more mushroomy in that sense, the flavor.
They say that it's umami. And cordyceps traditionally was served in soup. The Chinese royalty would make duck soup with the cordyceps mushroom. So if you could imagine it, I add it to I love making ramen noodles, right? Make me your ramen broth, I put a whole tablespoon of the extract powder in there. Sometimes two. Yeah, be careful with doses of that strength because you might be kept up all night. Is what's going on there. You might be kept up all night. But that's cordyceps. That's okay. We got to keep moving though.
Yeah. Okay. Which one's next?
So perhaps we should talk about lion's mane.
Sure. Okay. I didn't bring a little sample of lion's mane. I'll go grab that.
You got a nice lion's mane hanging around?
Yeah.
All right. So lion's mane is by far, we sell a lot of medicinal mushrooms here at Light Cellar. By far the #1 selling mushroom we have. So of all the medicinal mushrooms we have here, lion's mane is super trendy, we might say. Super trendy, but I believe there's a reason that people are so into it and that they keep coming back for lion's mane over and over again. That's always a sign to me that this is something that's effective, like a product that works, is because people notice it when they don't have it. Lion's mane is quite subtle in its effects as far as it goes. Like when you start taking it, you might not notice it for 2 or 3 weeks. You might not notice it until you're done your little jar. And then all of a sudden you don't have it. And then you're like, oh, that's what it feels like to have brain fog again. Like, oh, all of a sudden I can't concentrate the same way. It was the lion's mane working to do that. So lion's mane is a very weird looking mushroom. Hopefully Malcolm will bring you a specimen to look at. But basically, it doesn't have gills, does not have pores like the polypores, but it has teeth, dendrites, literally. They say that lion's mane is the furless, are the toothed mushrooms, the mushrooms with teeth, are the most evolved of all the mushrooms. They're the ones that are furthest along their evolutionary path. So yeah, they have these little like tentacle looking teeth, technically called dendrites, but they look exactly like the nervous system. Yeah. Oh, have I got a good picture of it here? Well, I hope so. Let's see. H. Hericium. Oh yeah, here's a good shot. We'll pass this book around for you guys to see. There's some that you guys can look at on the internet, but check it out. That's a little lion's mane mushroom, and it looks identical to the nervous system, identical to the neurons in our brain.
All right, and then we got some dried ones, small little cultivated guys as well. Here, I'll just show it online here for a sec. Okay, cool.
You get the idea. So lion's mane, by far the top selling mushroom in the light cellar. And why is that, Malcolm? Why do you think that is?
Well,
Why is everyone flocking to this mushroom?
Well, so number one, it's got the immune modulating benefits, just like all the medicinal mushrooms do. But each mushroom, as you get to know them, has its own unique characteristic and quality. So we've talked extensively about reishi, liver, cardiovascular health, cordyceps in terms of its unique properties. Now, the lion's mane maybe shines with brain health and nervous system specifically. So this is another one of Robert's books. Rejuvenating Your Brain Naturally is, we come back to, I don't believe in herbs. Well, there's over 1,000 scientific references just in this book alone. And quite a famous study was done specifically with lion's mane. And I'm just gonna kind of reference it here. So this was done in 2009. So kind of the highest, placebo, double-blind placebo-controlled trial on 50 to 80-year-old men and women that already had mild cognitive impairment, right? So they're already showing signs of cognitive decline. And then they were randomized into two different groups, 30 of them. One group was given 4 250 milligram tablets. So there's an indication of dose. So that would be 1/4 teaspoon 4 times a day. And then the other one was given just the placebo. So at weeks 8, 12, and 16, the mushroom group showed significantly higher scores on cognitive functional scale. And their scores just kept increasing with time, taking the lion's mane.
Yeah, so they've discovered a novel compound in lion's mane that they've not found in any other substance on the planet Earth. It's called like hericinon or something. That's the funny thing with science is these words. It's just another language to learn. But essentially, this erinacine contains nerve growth factor. So it can cause the synthesis and the regeneration of nervous system cells. And they found that this is equally effective. The lion's mane is equally good for like damaged nerves that you may have sustained in an injury. If you like hurt your nerves through an injury, it can actually regenerate and those nerves. But also in the brain, we're finding that lion's mane can not only regenerate the nervous system, and cause the growth of new nervous tissue, but what they discovered, it can remyelinate the nerves. So the myelin is the sheath on the outside of the nerves that apparently a lot of people with Alzheimer's, they've lost Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, they've lost this sheath on the outside of their nerves. So the lion's mane can actually remyelinate the nervous system. It's bonkers.
All right. And if we just reference the handy dandy appendix, so the Hericium species, of which we do have local species around here that we can literally go into the forest, find them, harvest them, as well as the cultivated ones. Analgesic, so pain relieving, antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor. So again, we could break that down in terms of, okay, specific to which organs, immune tonic, nerve tonic, of course, like Denis talked about, respiratory tonic, and stress. So that's kind of all the boxes that a Hericium species tick off.
Yeah, and it's delicious. It's one of the best edible mushrooms you can get. Like if you can go to your farmer's market, I'm sure you'll find lion's mane cultivated in Alberta now, organically.
Yeah, totally.
And eat it all at once. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. One of my craziest experiences with lion's mane, and I warn you not to take a lot of lion's mane before bed. A little bit won't affect you too much. At a certain point, I was taking literal tablespoons at a time. Like, I don't care. That was $7. I don't care. Making the $7 drink. Literally, I was up all night. It wasn't like a bad up all night with like your heart racing and stuff. It was like, whoa, I think I know what the Saints were talking about when they drew the Saints with their like big, the big halo of I could feel a tremendous energy come like in my mind, and I was probably glowing.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. Try it out.
Yeah. And I would say both lion's mane and reishi are the two maybe most utilized with magic mushrooms, psilocybin and microdosing for that. The reishi for just kind of calming, like especially if you get the little like the butterflies and the anxiety, reishi is good for calming that. And then lion's mane is really good for kind of the brain nootropic activity.
And lion's mane is a famous culinary mushroom. So it goes so good in soups, rice, oatmeal, whatever you want to add it to as food. It's great. Your ramen noodles, add that powder right in there. I like to mix it with ginger and honey as a tea. The ginger might potentiate it too, make it stronger.
Yeah.
Okay, we only got about 15 minutes left, and I know this is an exciting world, everyone. I know. We could. I feel like we could be up here for.
That's why we're doing the
an
symposium.
hour. Yeah, we could be here an hour every night for.
Yeah. So what year is this that we've done the symposium? How many years have we done it? This will be
This is the second officially, but we had the first.
That's right. Or did we have two previous
we
to
had
that?
the one with Robert Rogers and David Wolf.
Terry and Blaine. So anyways, we've done a number of these symposiums because there's just so much. So we've turned it into an annual thing. It's coming up March 20th to 26th. And so instead of just having your mind blown and overwhelmed for like, 2 8-hour days, we've got it separated into just evening chunks. So 7 to 8, 8 to 9, deep dives, but digestible. So we've got our friend Yarrow Willard, the herbal Jedi, he calls himself. He's going to be the opening keynote talking about the mycomedicinals. Robert,
tons of cool experts here. It's so much fun to be talking with these guys on the phone, trying to organize them. It's very challenging, actually.
So Robert Rogers, book number 59 or whatever it is, his latest one, Magic Mushrooms, Myth, Magic, and Science. So that'll be his presentation. And then this year, there's a new presenter for us and a very new topic, mushrooms for pets. Yeah, so medicinal mushrooms for pets. This is a vet, Dr. Rob Silver. He's going to be talking about that. And then Denis found this guy, Alan Rockefeller, who's a mycologist on mushroom photography.
Yeah, very cool. Taking photos of mushrooms might be the best way to get them identified by experts. And there's actually some very important things to keep in mind when you're photographing the mushrooms you find.
There's a technique. We get sent mushroom pictures all the time. And we're like, like, what is this? I'm like, no idea, right? You gotta take it this way, you gotta take it that way. So there's just some kind of protocol.
Then we've got one of our one of the best workers that ever worked at Light Cellar. Hey, Malcolm, we're so sad he left.
Wow, but he left to
Patrick,
go do
yeah.
his own business.
We got Patrick from Blue Lotus Ethnobotanicals talking about mushroom poisoning. Like what happens to you when you eat a poisonous mushroom? And what are the
Yes,
yeah, I've eaten a poisonous mushroom or two.
yeah.
Wh-
Yeah. So anyways, mushroom
Yeah.
toxins, poisoning and remedies. That's what he'll be talking about.
Yeah.
And then we have a woman on the roster this year, Amanita Dreamer, her name is. And so she's talking all about Amanita Muscaria, which is those classic red caps with the white dots on it. So literally a whole deep dive hour just on Amanita.
Considered a magical mushroom, but the science is finding that it has tremendous benefits for the nervous system as well. It can help with anxiety. It can help with like addictions, patterns of behavior, OCD, all these interesting things. And anxiety is the big one, I think.
Yeah. We've got this guy, Jasper, who's from the Fungi Academy. He's going to be talking about ethnomycology. So this kind of ancient history about our relationships and use of the mushrooms. Tony Oakworth, he's from the Pacific Rim College in Victoria. He's talking about the mycelial mind, psilocybin as a gateway to fungiphilia. Myself, I'm going to be doing a whole going gourmet. So how do we use medicinal mushrooms in a kind of a culinary gourmet context? Mushroom cultivation, Tony Shields from Fresh Cap. So how to grow mushrooms.
Tony Shields is going to give us a really good 7 steps to grow mushrooms at home. It's actually so easy. So he wants to make sure everyone is not frightened by how complicated it might appear to start growing mushrooms at home. But I know you got some you've got some growing around here, eh, Malcolm?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a sec. Then we've got a past president of the Alberta Mycological Society. Just a good hot tip. Alberta has a mycological society. If you want to kind of get more into this realm, join it. It's free, isn't it, to join the Mycological Society? Or is it a small fee?
Yeah, it's free to join their Facebook group, which is awesome for identifying stuff. I don't know. I think it's $30 to join the society, and then you get invited to special events.
Yeah.
Special secret foraging events.
So his topic is called Pharmacologically Active Mushroom Constituents Across the Fungi Kingdom. And then yours truly, Saccharomyces, the sugar-loving fungi. Denis, you'll have a whole hour on that.
Yeah.
And then we got a panel. So that'll kind of round off 12 presentations over
Super fun. Chance to ask your questions.
6 nights. Although you've got 7 days here.
It's 7.
Oh, it's 7 days. So
Yeah.
it's 14 presentations.
Yeah.
Holy. There we are.
It is.
Okay, cool.
But we're gonna send you all that. We're gonna send you all that cool information on your email if you sign up for this.
Yeah,
We have one more mushroom to talk about, Malcolm.
that's right.
Before we let people go, and before people want to ask questions too, because that's what we do want to take your questions here. Last but not least, and maybe one of the this is also one of the more popular mushrooms these days, but this is chaga mushroom, Inonotus obliquus. Chaga grows on birch trees. So here's actually one growing on a birch that I guess someone found a fallen log and they chopped this to bring for us to have a specimen here, but it's a birch tree and this is the chaga growing on it. It's literally called Inonotus because you're gonna have you probably won't notice it when you're in the forest. What?
Minonotus?
Yeah, I don't notice. A lot of people send us photos here of aspen burls that look like chaga, but the real way to identify chaga is the interior.
That orange color inside. So it's got this kind of
Orange.
black, kind of almost burnt crust-like exterior, and then
Spongy inside. But that's
in a rock hard
yeah.
kind of way.
You might find some other things that look like chaga, but if they're hard as wood inside and they're not chaga. You could pass this around here.
Okay.
But you'll feel it. It's kind of punky. They call it punky. What a punk, hey?
Yeah.
So chaga, of course, has all the benefits of the medicinal mushrooms, as we were talking about. Immunomodulator, good for inflammation, good for pain, good for blood sugar balance, all these things. But there's a few things that make it special.
Okay, let's just run right through it. The list from Roberts Brook. We've got antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-tumor, antiviral, blood sugar balance, immune tonic, and kidney tonic.
Yeah.
So not quite as broad of a range, but
remember, that's what has been researched so far.
right.
So as you can see from the color of the chaga, it's very dark. And one of the things going on in the chaga is this pigment called melanin. Melanin is a very fascinating substance. Like, it is related to melatonin in the brain. They do say that drinking chaga can have an effect on your third eye gland that can dissolve the calcification of your third eye. And I do notice when I drink chaga, like, my perception changes. Like, things I look at are more vibrant for some reason. Like, I like looking at trees after I drink chaga. That's a nice vibrant tree. So it does have this mysterious melanin. The other thing going on in chaga is that it's the single most powerful antioxidant we've ever discovered on the planet Earth. It's incredibly rich in superoxide dismutase. So this stuff is incredibly antioxidant, so slows down the aging process. Hey, Malcolm, we still got the fountain of youth here a little bit. But
Yeah.
The other thing going on is the incredible quantity of zinc. So chaga is just loaded with zinc, which we all know is part of the aging process as well. It's also part of the cancer fighting process. And that's where chaga is famous for. It's for inoperable cancers and cancers that are metastasizing. It seems to have something to do with the zinc content. We know this is important for the viral stuff too. But your body will not give birth to new cells if it doesn't have enough zinc. If you don't have enough zinc in your body will hang on to the old cells. So that's, that can be the ones you don't want to hang on to,
Yeah.
So really cool stuff going on that way. There's a whole book about chaga here. But these are all the benefits. These are all the benefits that have been discovered by modern science here. But yeah, analgesic, removes pain. Anti-allergenic. So there you see again that allergic response. Antibacterial, anti-cancer, anti-hyperglycemic, anti-inflammatory. All these, this is a big list. Anti-parasitic, anti-platelet aggregation, disperses clumped red blood cells. Anti-tumor, antiviral, blood purifier, blood sugar balancer, cardioprotective, fights bronchitis, improves circulation, immunomodulating, induces apoptosis, the spontaneous breakdown of cancer cells. Intestinal protection, colitis, gastritis, etc. Yeah, well, that's a big list, eh, Malcolm? Yeah, that's a lot of benefits.
All right. So, quickly, similar to the reishi in terms of you can take it as a tea. So, there's the whole mushroom, but surface area is kind of the thing. And so you can get it in chunks. You can actually get it as a fine powder. I prefer what's described as like the tea pieces, not too small, not too large. And then you can just kind of adjust the dose. It's definitely one that requires that decoction-like process. You can get a really nice dark brew from it. There are the extract powders. Again, you can see how kind of quite dark that is. And then here, this is something that Denise made, and it is
Yeah.
a syrup.
So this is one of my favorite ways to have the chaga. It's just a tincture that basically has been sweetened with a little bit of honey. Oh, makes it good for kids to drink. I'm gonna pass some of this around for us all to taste, but
Mhm.
dang, if you can make your medicine taste this good, hey Malcolm?
Mm.
Well, that's pretty good. This is actually chaga that I picked myself. I picked this chaga in this syrup myself in northern Alberta. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I'm gonna pass them around.
All right. Okay, so we'll give you a little wee shot of that. And okay, so a couple of questions here. So Materia saying, love my chaga tea with maple syrup as a sweetener. Yeah, great synergy there. The chaga primarily grows on birch. That's the primary host there. So there's a question. I have an allergy to birch. Can I still eat, drink, or take chaga? I'm not sure. Denis, have you ever heard of that? If someone's got an allergy to birch, would you still recommend?
I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, it's curious actually, birch as a tree has very medicinal properties, and there's actually 3 of the top medicinal mushrooms actually specifically grow on birch, and they're concentrating some of those compounds. I don't know in regards to that question, if with an allergy to birch, if you should still take chaga, because for sure it is concentrating some of the compounds out of the birch into itself, as well as has its own unique compounds. So that I don't know, but that is a very good question. All right. Okay, I wanted to come back to Roger's question. So wondering if there's a season better suited to consume certain mushrooms. Yeah, absolutely. So I had kind of started half answering that question in the sense that the seasonality of the mushrooms and their availability. I feel like, the ones that are out on the tree, year round, whereas the lion's mane, of course, medicinally, you can take it out of season, quote unquote, but I would tend to view that as more of a summer, cooling type mushroom. And then there's certain philosophies as well, something like chaga, which is so dark, right? That jing, there's a lot of kind of philosophy that that's a better substance, building your jing in the winter than summertime or springtime. Okay. Grace asks, can you use beta glucans, polysaccharides as a sweetener for chocolate? Good question. And the answer is no, not that I know of. Again, because they're very complex polysaccharides, so it actually doesn't taste sweet, but it is actually incredible in chocolate. You can actually add it to chocolate. It's not going to add a sweetness. It's going to add a real kind of bitterness, and you get all the benefits as an extract into your chocolate. Donna says chaga has anti-cancer properties. Okay, so Denis,
right.
Here's another question. Can you use chaga as a paste for topical cancers?
Yeah, so chaga has been known to be used topically. A member of the audience is saying if mixed with DMSO.
No, it's just a thought because
Oh.
Right, drives things
Yeah.
into the system. Yeah.
I personally haven't had experience. I know that
I mean,
I don't really have experience using chaga topically, but
one thing I would say
internally,
yeah, I would focus more on internal. And one area I would say don't use it. I've seen this trend of chaga soaps. People are adding chaga to soap, and I've seen no research to suggest that you're going to get any benefit from just rubbing it on your body. So it just seems like a waste. There was one company, they're like talking about all the benefits of chaga, and the only thing they could come up with why they had chaga in the soap was it would help exfoliate. I was like, well, that's a waste. That's a total waste. So I would pass on that. Okay, Wild Fetter asked an inootropic synergy based on lion's mane tincture. Which other herbs would you combine this amazing mushroom to inspire
Oh, right.
brain on?
Okay, so that was we had a good question from the audience online here. And it was about lion's mane. And we talked about how well, the word they used is nootropic. That's a great way to describe lion's mane. Nootropic being a substance that creates, mental clarity, focus, concentration, memory. And what herbs can you combine with lion's mane to make it stronger? So basically, yeah, the class of herbs, nootropics, there's many of them. Nootropic, nootropic. There's a great deal of them. That book does a great deal of, there's a great chapter here about it in the Adaptogens book. But apparently combining some sort of circulatory stimulant with the lion's mane does enhance it. So that's why I always add ginger to my lion's mane. But they're talking about some complementary herbs in this book. They're talking about, even things like rosemary. I believe that's because it's a circulatory stimulant. But they got all sorts of them here.
Bacopa, ginkgo.
Ginkgo, gotu-kola.
Yeah.
Those are all known to enhance circulation to the brain. So very cool. Ginkgo biloba. That one has kept me up. That one's a trick. That one can keep you up all night,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
All right. Well, speaking of that, we're just past the 9 o'clock mark here. So we're going to send you guys the recording, those that tuned in on live, those that are here in person. We did record this. We'll send that out. If you're interested in joining the Medicinal Mushroom Symposium, we just did a great kind of foundation from which you can leap off and dive in more. We've had an early bird special running, and it ends on Monday, and then the price goes up. So hopefully you'll be inspired to join us. We're going to do a little contest here. So we've got 2 grow your own reishi mushroom kits that we'll be giving away. So anybody that's already currently registered will be entered in to win 1 kit, and it comes with a video on how to do it and all that stuff. And then anybody who registers after the early bird, will put them into a draw to get a reishi mushroom growing kit as well. So
Yeah, it's gonna be the most fun you've had this lifetime. But I just wanted to finish everything up
imagine
here.
tonight, but 7 nights in a row.
I just wanted to end everything off here with a little story. You guys, let's about the reishi mushroom. Then we'll let you go. But this is a mushroom story. Well, this is a story that was told to me by Dr. Terry Willard, founder of the Wild Rose College of Herbalism. One day I was helping him in his garden, digging, and he told me this story. And so Dr. Terry Willard is a herbalist, and he did work. One of his jobs over many years, he actually got hired by pharmaceutical companies to go to the Amazon and try to discover new plant medicines that might be able to use for medicine, right? That could be developed into some sort of medicine. But anyway, that's what he was hired to do. It sounds like a fun job, but yeah. His job was to go down to the Amazon, and he actually hung out with a medicine man down there for like 3 weeks. He was like paired up with this a medicine person in this village, and every day they would go out into the jungle, and they'd be pointing out the plants and be taking notes like, oh yeah, this is used for that, and this is used for this. And so Dr. Terry Willard was down there, and he knew all about reishi. As a herbalist, he had actually already written this book that thick about reishi mushroom. So he knew all about reishi. And while he was down there in the Amazon, he was there's actually reishi that grows in the Amazon. So he's walking around with this medicine man, and he'd be like, what is that plant good for? Because he knew what it was, right? And he was like, what's that plant good for? Medicine man is silent. Ignores them. They keep going. You know, the next day, find another reishi. It's like, what is that plant good for? Same thing. Just ignores him. Finally, the third time they find it, and he's like, what's that plant good for? The medicine man's finally like, okay. That is not a plant at all. That is a being older and wiser than the entire rainforest. And it lives underneath the ground. And it knows every plant and every tree in the entire forest. Dr. Terry Wheeler, of course, was blown away because we're only starting to understand mycelial networks as our modern science is just finding that out. So they obviously knew something about it. And the medicine man went on to tell him, we use this as medicine when we go into the city and we get stressed out. And when we get lonely for our home in the forest, that's when we take the reishi as medicine. And the feeling you get is like you're back in your forest home. Okay, we'll leave it at that for you guys. Thanks everyone for coming. Yeah.